or you don't understand it. You know, it doesn't seem to make sense. It doesn't seem to fit what you already know. And so it takes a little time to get your feet wet. It takes a little time for you to gradually start to see what's being spoken about here, to see what's being pointed to here. But as you do, it opens up a whole new possibility for your life. It gives you a whole new way of understanding what your life is as a human being, and it gives you an opportunity to begin to practice something that will give you what you've always wanted. And you, like the rest of us, like all the rest of people in the world, we all want the same things, really. You know, what do we want? We want to be happy, we want to be peaceful, we want to be satisfied, we want our lives to work, we want to be able to function in the world and have our relationships work and everything. And so this is what these teachings and these practices make possible. So meditation is not just stress reduction, it's a psychotherapeutic process, because as you practice meditation, you begin to what we call wake up. You begin to be aware of things that have always been there, but you haven't noticed them. You begin to be aware of your own thought processes, and you begin to realize that a lot of your thinking is a waste of energy. You begin to realize that a lot of your thinking is torture, that you're torturing yourself with your own thought process. And so as you begin to see this, because you're more aware, you begin to realize that maybe I ought not to give my attention to those thought processes. Maybe that's not healthy. Maybe that's causing me to be depressed. Maybe that's causing me to feel anxious. And so you're starting to learn about a different way to exist, a different way to be. So these teachings are not about doing, they're about being. The world we live in is a doing world. Like Nike says, just do it. It's a doing world, right? And why is it a doing world? It's a doing world because most human beings are experiencing that the things that we want the most are missing. You know, the happiness we want, the peace we want, the satisfaction we want is missing. Oh, there may be brief periods in all of our lives when we experience what we call happiness. But if you really look closely at it, and if you really study the teachings where happiness is described, what true happiness is, you begin to realize that what people call happiness is really gratification. When you get what you want, you're happy, right? That's gratification, not happiness, right? And the pursuit of happiness is something that we're guaranteed by the Constitution, right? So we live in a country where we're guaranteed the right to chase after happiness our entire lives. And the problem with that is that it doesn't work. However, it works out very well if you're selling something to people, right? Because if you know what people want, if they want to be happy and peaceful and satisfied, and you can convince them that a new car will give you that, or a new house will give you that, or a new job will give you that, or a new partner will give you that, or a new face job will give you that, there's no end to how much there is available to sell you to allow you to think that you're going to be happy when you get those things. But if you've been around long enough, like I have, you realize that it doesn't work. I've had plenty of new cars, right? And it didn't work. Of course, you feel gratification when you have a new toy and a new car, right? But it doesn't last. You know, you're lucky if it lasts a week, you know, before you start to get the maintenance bills and you start to worry about getting dents in the car and you start to feel like, you know, well, I thought that made me happy, but I don't feel happy anymore about the car. It's just transportation now. So then you start looking again, right? And you're watching TV, and then they tell you on TV, well, all you have to do is drink Coca-Cola to be happy. Didn't you realize that? And you know, it sounds stupid, right? It sounds stupid, right? But it's a subliminal message. It sounds stupid. I mean, you wouldn't actually rationally think that drinking Coca-Cola was going to make you happy. But if you look at all the advertising that you come across, all the verbiage that is in the advertising is pointed at what's missing for you. It's pointed at what's missing. You just look at the language. There literally was an advertisement for Coca-Cola that said something like, Coke makes you more alive, something like that, right? But if you look at the language is designed to appeal to what's missing for you. The problem is the people that are selling you those things, for the most part, know that it's not going to satisfy you. You'll be a consumer for the rest of your life, right? So there's an endless array of the things that you can get to make you happy. And now you can get it within 24 hours from Amazon. So now it's even easier to be happy temporarily, until the next day and you're back on Amazon again, right? So it's very important to listen to the teachings, because the teachings are going to be pointing to a way out of suffering. The teachings are going to be pointing to this possibility of who you might be able to discover that you are like a being, not a doing, but a being, right? So being is not something that's valued very much in the world. Doing is valued, right? Because if you do things, you can get things for what you do, right? Well, what do you get for being? How valuable is being? Well, without being, the game's over, right? Being was how you got here. Being was what happened when you took your first breath and you were being in this world, right? And being has continued to be your true nature and has continued to be the essential reality of what you are, but your attention has been taken by the thinking activity, and as soon as you got language, you started to participate in the thought process and the thinking activity, and as soon as you got language, you started to be able to talk about how you feel, right? And then how you feel and what you think became your life. Right? And it hasn't worked out very well for any of us, right? It hasn't worked out very well for any of us. So it's important to consider these teachings. Maybe if you consider these teachings, you'll see in these teachings that these teachings are showing you a way to be in your life that does work, where you can actually experience happiness, satisfaction, and well-being. So I encourage you to listen to not just these talks, but there's a lot of good teachers out there now that are talking about this. You can go on YouTube, and there's a lot of good teachers out there. I've mentioned their names here because I'm not in this to be famous or make money. I'm in this to share something. The value of what I'm sharing with you is priceless. It's priceless. There is nothing more important than your experience of being satisfied and happy and peaceful and content in this life. There's nothing more important than that. That's why we say when somebody dies, rest in peace. You didn't have any here. Maybe you'll get some there, right? But the reality of it is, peace is available to all of us at all times, just like happiness and satisfaction is available to us at all times. If we only started to pay attention to where it exists. It doesn't exist in thinking. It doesn't exist in your emotional life. It exists in your experience of the being that you are, the awareness that is your essential nature, right? But you just had an experience when you practice meditation, right, that you can't keep your attention on that being for more than a few seconds. You're so habitually connected to the process of thinking, right? You think that thinking is necessary in order for you to live your life, right? But that's because you haven't experienced any alternative to that. And everybody in the world is thinking that as well, right? Even though it doesn't work, people never give up. They spend their whole life trying to be happy and satisfied and fulfilled and die trying. So what these teachings tell us is you don't have to wait until your death to rest in peace. You don't have to keep buying things to be happy. You don't have to keep looking for answers to the question of what's the meaning of life, what's the purpose of life, what am I missing here? You don't have to do any of that. You are the answer. You're the answer you're looking for. But you, like most human beings, have been conditioned and indoctrinated and socialized to be a person who thinks their way through their life, and a person who is attached to feelings and thoughts all the time. In the meantime, who you really are, your true nature, is there all the time waiting for your attention. And when you practice meditation for the first time, maybe for the first time in your life, you've moved your attention away from the thinking activity over here to the awareness of the body breathing. But this is so unusual and so strange, right? That as soon as a thought comes, you bounce right back to thinking because that's what you're familiar with, right? That you feel more comfortable thinking than being over here. I don't know. If I'm over here, I'm not sure what's going on there. What this is, maybe I should think about it, right? So that's the challenge of practicing meditation. But I promise you, over here, where there is no thinking, is where everything you want is. And although you may not be able to keep your attention there for very long now, that's why we call this a practice. If you keep practicing this, and if you keep listening to the teachings that are available, which will motivate you to practice this, because the teachings help you to see this is real, this is true, it's available to you, and all you have to do is put your time in practicing so that you become familiar with your true nature. And as you practice this over time, gradually and eventually, that true nature will start to show up. It's always been here, but since you haven't been paying attention to it, it's been lost, it's been unrecognized, it's been unexperienced. And so now if you start to pay attention to it, and you're learning about it, right, then you start to have an opportunity to discover something that works, something that's always available to you, something that is natural, something that is your true nature, and something that can fulfill you, can fulfill on what's possible for you as a human being. So in the beginning, when you listen to these talks, I mean, I'm trying to talk now in a way where you can kind of get the basic, understanding, but these talks, as a lot of these people here will share with you, can get a bit complicated and a bit abstract, right? And so you have to take your time and start with the basics and move up into the more abstract concepts about it, right? And be patient and diligent and understand that gradually, even though you may not understand something today, if you stay with it, if you don't give up with it, at some point it will be revealed to you. That's how this works. It will be revealed to you. There's also a book that I wrote for this class. I wrote two books, but this is the one, the most recent one. And I suggest that you try and get a hold of this. It's on Amazon, just like everything else. Yeah. And it comes in an audio book as well as a paperback, right? So, and gives you something that, what's in this book is really the heart of the matter. What's in this book is really the bottom line, right? And it's not something, I'm talking about it now in very simplistic terms, right? But in the book, I go into it in a lot more depth. And in the book, I'm talking about it in a way where I'm translating very high teachings from Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, from a lot of the Eastern esoteric teachings. I'm translating the basis of those teachings into common language so that you can understand it and get the benefit of it. And if you have any difficulty understanding anything that I'm saying here, talk to Nick. He understands all of this. You're welcome. One of the things that is in the deck for all of us, right, is that you're all going to get sick and die. Anybody here not clear about that? I remember here they have this cancer program here. What's it called? What's it called?
Live Strong.
Live Strong, yeah. Well, I'm a psychologist. They invited me to talk to the class once, right? And so there was about 15 or 20 people there, right? And everybody has cancer, right? And so I said to them, I'm a cancer survivor too, so I'm not outside of the world that you're experiencing, right? And then I said, before I say anything else tonight, I just want to be clear with all of us so we don't waste any time. Is everybody clear how this is going to turn out? People weren't happy to hear this, But it's the truth, isn't it? Yeah, no matter what you do, it's not going to matter. You're still going to die, right? And so if you're going to deal with that, why not deal with that first instead of last, right? Because that's something we all share. That's not strange and unusual. We relate to death as like it's something weird, like it's something that's not supposed to happen. We don't talk about that, We don't talk about that, right? Because everybody's so afraid of the fact that they're going to die, right? Well, one of the things, and they didn't invite me back, by the way, to that class. But one of the things about these teachings is that that's the ultimate expression of these teachings, right? Jesus Christ said it when he said, I offer you life everlasting, right? What did he mean by that? He meant if you wake up and discover your true nature, and if you begin to experience that life, the life of who you really are, that life is everlasting. Because the life of who you really are is the life of the awareness that is not physical. It is not a physical body. This is not rocket science. right? Is there anybody here that doesn't know that the awareness that you're experiencing, right, is not physical? Does anybody here not know that? The awareness that you're experiencing is not physical, right? Okay, if you're aware of that, can you then see that it follows naturally that if it's not physical and what is physical dies, right? That's what's going to die is the physical body, right? If the awareness is not physical and that's your true nature, that's your real self, right? Then are you going to die? It's a very simple thing, right? Well, then you might say, well, yeah, that sounds right. It sounds right. It seems to make sense, but I'm still scared, right? Yeah, that's because you, like most of humanity, has been thoroughly identified with this physical body and has been thoroughly identified with the thought process, right? And thoroughly identified with the fear-based understanding of what's true and the fear-based understanding about what's real. Right? So that's still running the program, isn't it? Right? So even if you know that it's not true that you're going to die, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything because the indoctrination and the thought process and the conditioning still runs, and that's telling you you're going to die. That's telling you you are your body. That's telling you you are the personality, right? And so that keeps your attention, right? Because your orientation is there. That's your identity. That's your identity. That's everybody's identity, right? Everybody believes they're your body. Everybody believes that they're the name that people call you when they talk to you, right? And we're living in the world where that's the understanding about what reality is. And the evidence speaks very loud and very clear to say that that is not workable. The reality speaks very loud and very clear and very consistent in providing feedback to all of humanity that the understanding that humanity has about what reality is not workable because it's not true. The evidence is clear that that's the case. And yet, with the evidence being clear that that's the case, everybody just keeps on keeping on. Everybody just keeps on trying harder, trying to do more, trying to do things different, trying to do things better, right? Keep changing things. You know, maybe I'll get this right someday. Someday I'll get it right, right? Well, what is the evidence that I'm referring to? Well, the evidence that I'm referring to is the fact that the experience you and I have as human beings is one where there's stress, where there's struggle, right? Where there's a lot of energy being wasted, right? We're tired a lot, right? We're wearing our bodies out, running around doing things, right? Wearing ourselves out, you know. The body's not able to relax. It's in a constant state of tension, constant state of fear-based orientation. Your life is a fear-based orientation. If you don't believe that, when you look at the news tonight, right, ask yourself, why are they talking to me that way? If you don't think your life is a fear-based orientation, look at the news and ask yourself, why are they talking to me that way? Everything they say on the news is and not only that, this happened. And not only that, and it's probably going to get worse. And this got worse, and that got worse, right? And there's an earthquake over here, and 50,000 people died, right? And there's this contamination in this city, and this politician's corrupt, and somebody murdered somebody over here, and the murder rate's going up, you know? And then you go to the weather. Oh, the weather doesn't look good. Oh, the worst snowstorms ever coming now. Worst snowstorms. So you see, why are they talking to me like that, right? They're talking to you like that because they know you're afraid, right? And so they want to get you to watch what they're saying so that when the commercial comes on, you'll be paying attention, right? They want you to get to watch what you're saying. And so if you're afraid, they want to keep telling you what you're afraid of and what you should be afraid of and how much there is to be afraid of, right? So that you spend more money on your security for your house, you know, so that you spend more money on the medication to tranquilize yourself so you can sleep at night, you know, so that you spend more money at the liquor store, you know, so that you can relax and enjoy a good movie before you go to sleep, before you get up into this terrible world again tomorrow. What the hell is going on? You know what I mean? Don't you think it's time for somebody to say, what the hell is going on? You know, why are we doing this? You know, this is it? There's nothing else possible? Is this reality? There's nothing else possible? No wonder the suicide rates are going through the ceiling, especially recently after the pandemic, right? Oh, and no wonder, I'm a psychologist, right? If you're a psychologist right now, you can work as much as you want. You have to turn people away, because people are rushing to try and get help. Help, give me relief. Tell me how I can get some relief from this suffering that I'm going through. Well, the
expression, life sucks and then you die.
That's right. And unfortunately for most people it does, but the reason it does is because they don't attempt to question the reality that we're given. They don't attempt to question the fact that, is this all there is? Is the herd that's running off the cliff the only possibility? And the herd is running off the cliff, right? We're destroying the environment, right? The herd is running off the cliff. Human beings still can't get along after all the thousands of years we've been on the planet. We can't get along. We argue over stupid shit every day, don't we? Yeah, it's like we're busy finding something to be upset about so we can justify our existence. This is insane, right? So one of the teachers that I came across, he used to say, practicing meditation is a tool that you can use to go sane. Which means that you're crazy. You're crazy. And it's not your fault. You were born into a crazy world with crazy people running it, right? What could you do? You were only, just like me, you were a child. You took it on like everything was the truth, like this was the truth, right? You never discovered, and maybe a lot of people won't discover before they die, that human beings are crazy. Human beings are crazy. At least neurotic, and the definition of neurosis is a mild mental disturbance, right? Human beings are crazy. But the craziness that human beings experience is a craziness that we all have in common, so we call it normal. Do you really want to continue living a life in that reality? Do you really want to continue to be a psychiatric case? Continue to be struggling and coping and putting up with life and trying to find some peace somewhere, some safety somewhere, some happiness somewhere. And then Dr. Parrish comes along and says, oh, wait a minute. Everything you've ever wanted is available all the time. The peace, the happiness, the satisfaction, the well-being is available all the time. Just like Richie Davidson, the neuroscientist, said when they studied meditators, they discovered that these meditators who were happy, satisfied, and at peace, right? They discovered that their brains were different than other people's brains. They discovered that through meditation, they changed the structure and the function of their brain, which means you can hack your brain. You don't have to keep suffering from the misunderstanding your brain has about reality. You can start to practice meditation, and by practicing meditation, you can start teaching your brain the truth. You can start teaching your brain the truth. Neuroplasticity means, that's the new understanding. It's not that new now, it's about 15, 20 years old. The understanding that the brain's changing all the time. As you live your life every day, the way you're experiencing things is communicating information to your brain. The way you're experiencing things, the way you perceive things, the way you think about things, the way you feel about things. In other words, your craziness is communicating that to your brain. So now you have a crazy brain. You have a crazy center of operation going on, right? So through meditation, you can begin to hack your own brain. You can begin to change your brain, right? Because as you practice meditation and you start to discover your true nature and you start to discover the possibility of being at peace and happy and satisfied, and you start to have experiences like that, now that information is going to your brain, and your brain's now learning that the world isn't as dangerous as you thought it was. You don't have to live your life like somebody's chasing you with a knife all day. You can start to relax, right? You can start to get your nervous system to come into balance through this practice. You can start to calm down and wake up and start to experience being in your life, in the real life, not the thought life, but the real life. Not what you think about life, right? But actually being there, being aware of what's going on, right? Being what you really are as the awareness, right? And experiencing what's called the natural state. The natural state, where you're just happy. You're not trying to be happy. You didn't try to get something to be happy. No, you're just happy. You wake up in the morning and you're happy. Why? because you've discovered that your true nature is happiness. That happiness is a function of the fact that you're so gratified and you're so appreciative of the fact that you exist. Isn't this what happens before you die? You know, when life is coming to an end and you're on your deathbed, right? What are you going to be missing? What are you going to be missing? What are you going to be losing, right? You're not going to be losing your money. You're not going to be losing your cars and all the toys that you have and all the rest of it. You're going to be losing your life. That's what you're going to be losing. And the life you're going to be losing is what? It's the fact that you existed in the world. That's going to come to an end, right? So as my Zen teacher said, human beings have this all wrong. When you were born, the birth was the fulfillment of your life. The birth was the fulfillment of your life. But then you learn to be dissatisfied, you learn to identify with what you're not, and your life turns into a stressful struggle instead of experiencing that your birth was a fulfillment of your life. What does that mean? It means that being born and existing is a miraculous occurrence. It's a miraculous occurrence. And we relate to it as if it's nothing, you know? It's nothing. Doesn't mean anything. It's not that important. I didn't ask to be born, right? Life is something to complain about, not something to enjoy. So how do we get it all wrong? How do we get that far away from the truth, right? Well, we practiced getting it all wrong. We practiced getting it all wrong. Every day we would get up and we would practice being a personality, practice being a fearful person, practice competing with other people, practice dealing with all the challenges of life, practice struggling to stay above water, right? That's what we learned. So when you practice meditation, you're learning to move your attention out of that. It's not that thinking is inherently wrong or bad. You have to think to function in the world, right? But there's a big difference between the necessary thought process in order to function in the world and that other 40% that you spend thinking about yourself and worrying about the past and the future. That's unnecessary. It doesn't have to be that way. You can practice your way out of that. You can practice your way into being more aware, awake, happy, satisfied, and peaceful just through practicing meditation every single day. Whether you believe it or not, whether you understand it or not, it doesn't matter. It's true, and it works, right? And that's why there's more and more people getting interested in meditation and understanding it's not enough even to be in good physical shape is not enough, right? Because this body's unstable, this body's fragile, this body is not going to last in time, right? So like I often say, you can go out here, this is a gym, you can go out here every day and see all these people working out hard, you know, sweating, you know, making sure that the body looks good, looks perfect, and so forth, right? And if you could hear what's going on in their minds, right, you would hear a lot of crazy people with nice bodies. What good is it to be in good shape physically if you're crazy? If your relationships suck? You know what I mean? What good is it? It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really make any difference. In fact, it can make you even more miserable. It can make you even more miserable because now you're an attractive human being, right? But you're now paranoid about whether or not that's going to be enough to have people care about you and love you, right? You know, some of the most beautiful women in the world died tragic deaths, right? Because they felt that nobody really knew them. They felt that everybody only was interested in their physical appearance and nobody really cared about who they really are, right? Well, there's a truth to that because it is an appearance. It is an appearance and it is superficial, right? So if you want to experience being known and if you want to experience knowing other human beings, then you have to get below that to the actual reality of who you are. And when you get to the reality of who you are and you see it clearly and you begin to experience it, you begin to realize all of us are the same one. All of us are the same one. This awareness that I'm talking about is literally and exactly the same from one person to the next. Your personalities are different, your histories are different, your bodies are different, but the awareness that you are is exactly the same. We are the same exact being. We are one being, non-dual, the same exact being. And when that begins to be your experience, the way you relate to other people changes. Because you don't take them to be their personality, you take them to be their natural self, who they really are.